All right. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for Sick of Traditional Grading? Then it is time to convert to mastery-based. Our presenter today is Krista O'Brien of Howard Community College. My name is Kelsey, and I will be your moderator today for Hawks Learning. We will have a live Q&A session after the presentation, so please enter any questions you have into the Q&A as we go. And I will now hand it over to our presenter.
Hey, everybody. As Kelsey said, my name is Krista O'Brien, and I'm coming to you from Howard Community College, which is located in Maryland. It's a little city in Columbia, so we're kind of just outside of, about 45 minutes outside of Baltimore. I'm going to share my screen. So this has kind of been, I want to say, like my baby. I did a promotion project on this, which lasted quite a few years. And I just finished it up this couple months ago. And I kind of stumbled upon this ungrading / mastery-based grading one semester. Actually, it was right before COVID. I'm always talking to a colleague of mine, and he's always trying new and improved things. So I had said to him, what are you doing these days? And he said, oh, I'm doing this new thing. It's called mastery base. It's ungrading. And I was like, okay. So so we started talking, and I jumped right into it. Feet first, head first. Not even knowing what it was about, but I wanted to try something new because I knew my students needed something different. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. I'm going to talk about what it looks like, my results of my project, and how you can convert your class, or even if you don't want to convert a whole class, maybe just even an assignment or two into ungrading, or you can also call mastery base. Okay, so let's see. All right. So a quote that I want you to think about first, it's by Sean Michael Morris, is when we talk about grades, we are talking about people. So I think sometimes when we are teaching our students, we kind of lose view of that, we think that they walk in there, they're supposed to kind of like do as I say, and we forget that they have feelings, that they're people, they have lives outside of school. And so when I think about that, I'm also, when I'm doing my grading now, I'm also thinking about them as a person, who they are, because I do have a lot of non-traditional students. So my average is probably not your 17, 18-year-old, but I do have lots of older students or students that are coming back to school. I also have a lot of ESL students, which we call now MML students, multilingual students. Okay, so a little background, as I was saying. So I teach primarily English. Most of my expertise is in developmental reading and writing, but I also do teach a lot of composition classes, and I do some humanities and communication classes also. And so, especially for my writing intense courses, I was grading all these essays, and I was taking my time, and I was writing all these comments, and my students were not reading my comments. They just wanted to know what grade they got on their assignment. So I was spending hours grading. I was writing all these comments. They were not reading my comments because I felt like if they read my comments, then they would apply those comments to like their next piece of writing, which was never the case. And the same mistakes were not being made. The same mistakes were being made. There was not a lot of learning, I felt like, going on, and students didn't care because they just wanted to see their grade. So like I said before, I talked to a colleague who was doing mastery grading, or they call it ungrading, or you might have heard it called specification grading. So those are just some other terms of how you might have heard this before. So the why. I don't know if you guys, it's getting cut off on my end a little bit. But our school, our classes were doing a lot of point-based grading schemes. And you often end up assessing things that are loosely related to their learning, such as their punctuality, their attendance, or following directions. So we had these, I was grading them on if students came in late, of course, their attendance. So if they came in late, I was taking off points for them coming in late. Um, if they didn't attend at all, they lost points. So I felt like I was always trying to give them, incentives to come to class, or I was trying to bribe them to come to class. I was doing all these other things besides I felt like teaching. And I wanted to get back to the teaching part. So I started looking at everything that I was doing. So we had a lot of point bases going on, a lot of averages. You know, we had my school, we did a lot of like, starting off small in the beginning of the semester, things would be worth like maybe 10%. And then as the semester went on, maybe the second essay or the third essay was worth 20 or 25%. And then at the end, 30% for midterms and finals. So everything was built upon it. So if the students started off strong and then they kind of dipped off at the end, they paid the price because of the averaging, right? Because their point based or their percentages in the beginning of the semester weren't as high as they would be at the end of the semester. And might be vice versa. Maybe they didn't start off very strong at the beginning of the semester, but then at the end of the semester, they started to pick it up. But again, they lost those percentages or those points at the beginning, and they couldn't get to that grade that they wanted. So there was a lot of that going on. So I felt like the grades at the end of the semester really didn't reflect who the student truly was. Right. And then we see big bright numbers, especially if you graded it, if you're still grading on, with pen and paper, the students, they see those red marks because the red pen. And that also, excuse me, that also distracts the student, right? Because they're looking for that grade. They're looking, if they see a lot of red marks or they see any kind of marks all over their paper, they get discouraged. I had times many students that they would look at their grade, crumple up their paper, throw it away, right? They didn't even want to see anything else about it. Even if I was like, oh, we could revise it or we'll do this, they didn't care, right? It was felt like they don't know what they're doing. They don't understand it. They're never going to get it. And they want to be done with it. So I went on to find this video, and it's called Let's Teach for Mastery, Not Test Scores. And it's by Sal Khan. I'm going to do just a couple minutes of it, just for the first few minutes. It's only 10 minutes total, but I'm only going to be the first few minutes because there's a couple things in this video that really hit home to me. And please let me know if you can't hear it once I start playing it.
Krista, I don't think we can hear it. When you share screen, so you're gonna have to stop sharing screen
Oh,
and share screen again. And there's
oh,
a little in the bottom left corner should
sorry.
be share sound. You just have to click that.
Okay, sorry, Kelsey, go ahead.
Oh, you're fine. So you just have to, so if you share screen again,
Huh?
there's a little like button you can click in the left, it should be in the left corner that says share sound. And then you should be able to share it. So if you try to share your screen again.
Okay. Share.
Did you click the little button that said share sound in the corner?
I didn't see anything that said share sound.
I would try it one more time. So when you click share screen,
Okay.
before you select share, there's a button in the bottom left and it says share sound.
I don't have that on the bottom left.
Weird. Okay.
Um, oh shoot. I'm sorry, guys.
No, it's okay. If you want, can you send that clip to me and I could share it for you?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Okay. Let me see. Out of here. Oh. All right. Sorry, everyone.
All good.
Okay, see if I put it in the chat. Okay. Did you get it, Cassie?
Yes.
Okay.
Product.
Then you might want to check this out. I hate regular. I'm a
All right, I'm gonna share my screen. And just let me know when you want me to stop the video.
Okay.
You can hear it.
Yes.
I'm here today to talk about two ideas that, at least based on my observations at Khan Academy, are kind of the core, the key leverage points for learning. And it's the idea of mastery and the idea of mindset. And I saw this in the early days when I was working with my cousins. A lot of them were having trouble with math at first because they had all of these gaps accumulated in their learning. And because of that, at some point they got to an algebra class and they might have been a little bit shaky on some of the pre-algebra. And because of that, they thought they didn't have the math gene, or they'd get to a calculus class and they'd be a little bit shaky on the algebra. I saw in the early days when I was uploading up some of those videos on YouTube, and I realized that people who are not my cousins were watching. And you know, at first those comments were just simple thank yous, and I thought that was a pretty big deal. I don't know how much time y'all spend on YouTube. Most of the comments are not thank you. They're a little edgier than that. But then the comments got a little bit more intense. Student after student saying that they had grown up not liking math. It was getting difficult as they got into more advanced math topics. By the time they got to algebra, they had so many gaps in their knowledge that they just couldn't engage with it, and they thought that they didn't have the math gene. But when they were a little bit older, they took a little bit of agency, and they decided to engage. They found resources like Khan Academy, and they were able to fill in those gaps and master those concepts, and that reinforced their mindset that it wasn't fixed, that they actually were capable of learning mathematics. And in a lot of ways, this is how you would master a lot of things in life. It's the way that you would learn a martial art. In a martial art, you would practice the white belt skills as long as necessary, and only when you've mastered it, you would move on to become a yellow belt. It's the way that you would learn a musical instrument. You practice the basic piece over and over again, and only when you've mastered it, you go on to the more advanced one. But what we point out, this is not the way that a traditional academic model is structured, the type of academic model that most of us grew up in. In a traditional academic model, we group students together, usually by age and around middle school age and perceived ability, and we shepherd them all together at the same pace. And what typically happens, let's say we're in a middle school pre-algebra class and the current unit is on exponents. The teacher will give a lecture on exponents, then we'll go home, do some homework. The next morning we'll review the homework, then we'll get another lecture, homework. That'll continue for about 2 or 3 weeks, and then we get a test. And on that test, maybe I get a 75%, maybe you get a 90%, maybe you get a 95%. And even though that test has identified gaps in our knowledge, I didn't know 25% of the material. Even the A student, what was the 5% they didn't know? Even though we've identified those gaps, the whole class will then move on to the next subject. Probably a more advanced subject that's going to build on those gaps. It might be logarithms or negative exponents. And that process continues, and you immediately start to realize how strange this is. I didn't know 25% of the more foundational thing, and now I'm being pushed to the more advanced thing. And this will continue for months, and it'll continue for years, all the way to at some point I might be in an algebra class or a trigonometry class, and I hit a wall. And it's not because algebra is fundamentally difficult, or because the student isn't bright. It's because I'm seeing an equation, and they're dealing with exponents, and that 30% that I didn't know is showing up. And then I start to disengage. And to appreciate how absurd that is, imagine if we did other things in our life that way. Say home building.
First off,
Yep.
if you haven't made money,
Okay, you can stop, Kelsey.
yet,
Sure. Okay. I'll share my screen again. So he goes on to explain about the home building. Like suppose you when you're building a wall, right? Or you're building the house and you're starting with the first floor and you only get 20, if you got like 75%, like he was saying, 75% of the first floor complete, he's like, oh, okay, we'll move on to the next floor. But again, we're not filling in those gaps, right? So this is what's happened with students, is that we've continued to move them along, starting with elementary school, we've kept moving them along. And now by the time they reach us in college, there's bigger holes, right? There's bigger gaps in their learning. And this is where they come in with, I don't like math, or I don't like reading, I don't like writing. So he talks about the idea of mastery learning is to do the exact opposite. Instead of artificially constraining, fixing when or how long you work on something, pretty much ensuring that the variable outcome, the A, B, C, D, F, do it the other way around. What the variable is, how long a student actually has to work on something, and what's fixed is that they're actually going to master the material. So that's what I did with my class. I started revamping. So I felt like learning should never be a confined act, but a liberal one. And we should be able to learn in all kinds of directions. We've all heard that there's the kinesthetic learner, there's the auditory learner. So we want to make sure that we're hitting all these different types of learners in our classrooms. And mastery plays a part in that. All students don't learn by you walking in there, being handed a piece of paper, to being told to do something. So we need to meet each student on their path, and everybody's path is different. So for grades, we perform learning in order to not fail, in order to be rewarded the best possible mark. That's what the students want. They want the best possible mark, because they want to get good grades, and we don't ask questions. We pay attention only to what we need to, seeking to master that, rather than ask why we can't be mastering a whole lot more. We are teaching within a box. I'm trying to get my students to learn outside that box, so I'm going to teach outside that box. Okay. For some students, grades are like a cage. Grades are a kind of cage for our understanding of ourselves, such that instead of freeing us to feel confident and capable of exploring and experimenting, we are grade by grade corralled into believing we are not good at writing, not good at math, not good at science, could never be a doctor, could never be a teacher, could never be an astronaut, right? We look at some of our students and we're already telling them what they can or cannot do. But we're not giving them the opportunity. Their grades are defining who they are. And we want the grades not to do that. So ungrading is a response to the response to the harm that grading has done, continues to do, and will always do unless we seek another practice. So that's why I have switched to my classes are all on grading. I'm trying to undo all that harm and have students more believe in themselves, take risks in their reading, take risks in their writing, take just risks in general with their learning. Okay. I love this thing because when you think of Michael Jordan, you think of the ultimate, he's the greatest, one of the greatest basketball players ever, right? And here's a quote from him. I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed. we don't think of all of what he hasn't done or what he didn't accomplish. We're always thinking of how great he was, right? But why was he great? Because he got the time to go back and practice and perfect his craft, right? He was able to recover from his failure, and have a life and kept learning the game, right? I tell my students, think of it as riding your bike without training wheels. First time you rode your bike without training wheels, you probably fell off, right? We didn't tell our kid or our child, hey, that's it. You can't ride a bike now. You fell off. We kept making them get back on the bike, practice, holding on, trying different techniques to get them to learn how to ride their bike. Well, teaching should be the same way. Getting our students to learn should be the same way, right? Students need that time. They need that practice. So masters are not experts because they take a subject to its conceptual end. They are masters because they realize that there isn't one. We become masters in our craft because we keep practicing it. We keep practicing it over and over again. We try to make our classes probably better than the semester before. We change it. We try to make things work differently. And that's what we need to do for our students. Jesse Stommel, he's been famously known for the whole ungrading or mastery-based grading, excuse me. And he says we need to re-examine all of our pedagogical approaches. That is where what work begins, not with the question of why do I ungrade, but with the question of why am I actually teaching, right? We all went into teaching for a reason, probably not to fail our students or not to mark them off. We wanted to teach them. We wanted them to learn. So we need to come up with an approach that is actually going to help them to learn. And if ungrading is going to succeed, our practices should look to be flexible, student-driven, consistent, but not consistent as in the same every time consistency. Consistent as in a congruent with the rest of our teaching. So at any given time, if you walk into my classroom, students are all over the place. They're on all different paths because they're all trying to master something different within the class. So I've had to give up control, which a lot of teachers don't like to do. So I've had to give up control. I've had to put the control into the students' hands. I've had to be flexible and student driven. So it takes a while. And it takes some practice. That's why I'm saying some of you might want to just start with maybe 1 or 2 assignments and then move on. I jumped in feet head first because I wanted to just try something new. Okay. So how does it look? Okay. Without re-examining all of our pedagogical approaches, and this work looks different for every teacher. So even the teachers that have switched at my school to mastery-based grading or ungrading, everybody's looks very differently. So you have to do what you feel most comfortable with, what works for your students, what works for your school too. So that means that for each one of us, not only will the how of ungrading look and feel different, but the work we do to get to ungrading will be highly personal and individual because you have to look at each individual student. You have to look at each individual needs of your students. And that takes a lot, that does take some time. So how did I do this? Okay. So I first started thinking about why I asked myself, why do I grade? Then I was like, why do I grade? We all hate grading. I hated it, right? It takes up so much of our time. And then we feel like students aren't really doing anything with it. I thought to myself, why do I want to try ungrading? What will the ungrading might look like for me as it was distributed across my teaching? So those were the first 3 questions I started thinking about after I kind of dove in. I had to take a step back. So I started with my objectives. So I took my course objectives which I knew I couldn't do anything about. Those were the course objectives that the students had to know. I couldn't change them. So I was like, okay, so the first day of class, you're always coming in and right, I'm kind of going over the syllabus and here are the objectives. Students don't know the objectives. If I asked them, one of my students, what are your objectives back then? They probably would not know. So I took my objectives and I was like, how can I put this into words that they'll understand? So I came up with 4 standards and I came up with ideas, content, organization, and conventions. I was like, they can learn 4 words, right? They might not learn our 8 objectives, but they'll learn their 4 words. So for ideas, a couple of our objectives was apply metacognition and critical thinking strategies to complete a reading and writing tasks. Students were always like, what? What does that mean? So I'm thinking, okay, this goes under ideas. Demonstrate an awareness of the relationship among the writer, audience, and purpose. So that was the rhetorical situation. But again, it fell under the standard that I have of ideas. So they know that one of their standards they have to meet is ideas. A second standard was content. Make connections between reading and writing by referencing specific textual evidence to support ideas. So that's where all their research and their writing comes in. So that fell under content. That was an easy word for them to learn besides doing like works cited and sources and, you know, reliable or unreliable sources. There are textual evidence, articles, researching. So that fell under content. So then their organization, the way it was all going to look, the whole writing process, the reading process, that fell within organization. Okay, their pre-reading strategies, their taking of their notes, that fell under organization. And then, of course, I still wanted them to write complete sentences and I wanted them to use capital letters and punctuation. So that's where the conventions came in. So I took my objectives and I made them into standards. I made them into 4 standards. You can make yours into more standards. You can make yours into less standards, but these 4 standards seem to work for my classes. So this is how we started with the 4 standards. I'm going to click an example of what one of my lessons might look like. So, so this is for one of my online classes. So rhetorical situation is a big piece of our objective that I want students to recognize. So what I would do is we had an article that the first day we would kind of talk about, and it was called Learning the Right Way to Struggle. And so they read that article, they take notes on the article, which that's another whole lesson. But then after they've gotten to this part, they would learn about the rhetorical situation. So I give them a video. Now, if I'm teaching face-to-face, of course, I might show the video in class, or I might talk them through the video and talk through the parts of the rhetorical situation. But for my online students, I usually show them the video, and as they're watching the video, they would take notes. Then the next part is I broke it down into the content. So here I've included that content word, so they know that they have to master the content. And these are the things that I want them to be able to master. So of course they have to know the title and the author. They're going to figure out what is the topic of this article. They're going to identify the audience and the purpose. And the 2 purposes we usually talk about are persuading the audience and informing them. So those are two big things that we focus on throughout this is our reading course. And then they're going to go and they're going to write their paragraph, maybe about what they liked, they disliked, what they connected with. And again, this is where ideas and organization come in. And then of course, they're going to revise it using there's conventions. So this is how the parts of their objectives fit in. So they complete it, and then for their grading, they get a complete or an incomplete. So they get a check mark or they get an, because that's the only way we can do it. We have Canvas, so that is the only way I can grade them. But they have a rubric. So in their rubric, it's identified again, content, did they identify correctly the writer, topic, the purpose, the audience? If they did all of those correctly, they would get mastered. Same thing for their organization, conventions, and ideas. So they would see if they mastered all four. If they mastered all four, then of course that's where they're gonna get the complete. If they did not master one of the four criteria, they would get a not mastered. So then in their comments, I would write, I'd say, be sure to look at my comments, look at your rubric to see what you didn't master. Now, usually a big one that they don't master the first time around is audience. They'll be like, it's for everybody. And I'll be like, an article is never for everyone. You want to make sure it's designated to a specific group of people. So they'll go back, they'll revise it, they turn it back in. And then once they get it, I would change the not mastered into mastered. And then I would change their incomplete to a complete. All right. And that's how all of our assignments are set up. So, so I break it down, as easy, to make it easy for them to read. So I use as little words as possible. I include a rubric, and then they're looking for that check mark, and they're looking for the X, and they're also looking for my comments, because my comments is going to kind of direct their attention. Okay. Let's see if I go back. So I showed you the rubric. So again, that's how all of our assignments are set up. All right. So here are some of my results. So when I first tried this happened right after COVID. Actually during COVID, because we were forced to go online. We had never taught any of our developmental classes online before. So we got switched to online. And then we were launching our integrated reading and writing course. So I not only was launching in person or online, I was also launching a new course. So the very first time I launched this, trying mastery-based grading with my developmental students, my success rate was 74% that fall. Again, we were all strictly online, and I just tried this by myself with my 2 sections that I was teaching at the time. For spring, my remote students, their success rate went way up to almost 93%, where my traditional grading, the teachers who stuck with traditional grading, their success rate was about 73%. And the big thing we saw was in our late start, our students who did mastery-based grading, their success rate was 75% compared to the late start traditional grading, which was 38%. So that was a huge difference. So as you can see, it has fluctuated a little bit. Our school looks more at our spring data. I don't know why, but they do. And so that's why I have a little bit more specific data in the spring than I do in the fall. Spring is usually where our enrollment drops, and so does our success rate. So I think that is partially why we pay more attention to our spring, what our students are doing in the spring. But each semester I really had a better success rate of doing mastery based than I did, or than other teachers do doing the traditional. And that was a big thing too. Why weren't these students being successful? Because then they have to retake the class if they don't get a C or above. And we have to, they have to retake, and it doesn't count for college credit because it's a developmental class. So they have to retake developmental class. So that's very frustrating to the students too. So I was trying to see what I can do to help them be successful, because it wasn't like they couldn't read and write. It was that other life events were getting in their way, and, that was holding them back. So I felt like mastery grading was really getting to the core of the student and of who the student was, not the student as what was going on in their life, but as a student. Some takeaways that I had was that the late start classes, when you're looking at the data, have a lower success rate overall. But our late start classes have never been successful at our school. Our online classes have had a really high success rate. The summer class that we offered in 2022 had a 75% pass rate. So we started trying it in the summer, and our summer classes are 8 weeks. So it was also it was condensed. So that we thought was very successful also, because now the students are doing mastery grading, but in a shorter amount of time. One thing we felt that we needed, or I felt like I needed to do more, was other teachers who were going to start using this, was that we definitely needed to have some more faculty training on this plan. And then we also have retention specialists that help us. And the retention specialists have been really great. So students who kind of like have dropped off, the retention specialist will to reach out to our students and try to like phone them to see what has happened, to try to get them back on track. So we do a lot with that. And so I felt like the retention specialists have really helped students get back on track faster. What the students are saying, they say they like it better than traditional grading. They say you care about our learning, not just our grades. They're not afraid to write, because even if they write the whole thing wrong, they're not going to fail. They just have to revise, right? They have to just change it back. We've learned to manage our time when there are more flexible due dates, and it makes a big difference, because again, I've kind of opened the box up a little bit for them. What I'm actually teaching. So I've asked them, what am I actually teaching, and what are the most important thing for a professional in my field to be capable of? And then bend your teaching in that direction. So you want to ask yourself, what am I actually teaching? What do the students actually need to know? So I really took at what they needed to know to help make sure that they're going to be successful then in our composition class. So I really took a look at those two. And then I felt like, then what is the most important thing that they need to take with them? And then I made sure my class and my teaching went towards that direction. And then here are just some of my resources that I've used. But if you want some more resources, there's a ton. I can always send you a lot. I can send you some. And then if you have any questions, you can feel free to email me, or actually you can put it in the chat today, right now, because we can open this up for discussion or any questions she might have. But thank you for coming and listening.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Krista. And as she
Sure.
said, please place any questions you have for her into the Q&A or the chat, and we can give everybody a couple minutes to think about it or put anything in there.
Oh, sure. Back.
Awesome. And we do have a question. Is there a limit to the number of times a student can rewrite their work if they receive a not mastered assessment?
So this is where a lot of teachers and I differ. So I say no. I let them revise as many times as possible. What has happened is some students have waited and tried to wait till the end of the semester to try to get it all done. And, then a lot of grades are coming in towards the end. So what I have done for the last couple of semesters is, since we're on 15-week semesters, is after the first 5 weeks, and they know ahead of time, I'm going to lock those assignments. So they can revise as many times as they want those assignments within the first 5 weeks, but then those assignments are going to be locked and they're going to focus on the next section, like 6 through 10. So I let them revise. Now, some teachers are like, nope, after 3 times they're done. I don't really feel that's fair to the students, because again, sometimes it takes students a little bit longer to grasp the concept. Especially sometimes if it's online. I do allow a lot of leeway with that because they're not face-to-face. Now, if a student misses the deadline and wants to go back, I have lots of office hours and I ask them to come on and we come up with a plan together of how we're going to, get on track.
Then we do have another question. How
Sure.
do you determine what the final recorded grade will be for the class?
Okay, some people feel like this. They decide what their grade is. Now you're probably like, what? They're all going to give themselves an A. Now, they don't actually. So the first time I did this, my students, so I was like, oh my God, again, it was during COVID and I had tried it with my composition class. And again, remember I jumped in head first. So I'm like, oh my God, my students are going to give all themselves an A on this. So what I did was I went through, I had looked at all their assignments and I had my class list and I gave them each a grade that I personally felt that they had deserved. And I can show you, make them do a reflection. So they have to reflect upon all the labor, all the work they have done throughout the semester. Now, it doesn't matter how many times they had to revise it. At the end, how many assignments have they mastered? And then based on that, what grade do they feel like they've earned? Believe it or not, all the grades that the students had given themselves, I had given them. That was the same grade. If anything differed, it was actually they gave themselves a lower grade than what I felt they deserved. And if they did that, then I told them I felt like you deserved a higher grade and I gave them the higher grade. But every 5 weeks also, I make them do a reflection. And so I kind of say, okay, yes, you're on that path. You're on that path of receiving that grade. Some students will say to you up front, I only want the C. I just want to pass so I can move on to the next level. So, and that's what we talk about. We talk about what you're going to have to do then to get that C. Hope that answered your questions.
We have Naomi asking, what number of students are you grading in this manner? It must take extra time to regrade.
It does. I teach 4 classes and there's about 20 students in each class. So I have about 80 students a semester, sometimes a little bit more if I'm going to take an overload. So it could be up to 100 students. The rubrics make it go a little bit quicker. But once, like I had a lot of revisions come in, usually on Monday, because they'll revise a lot over the weekend. I look to see what my comment was to them. And then I go and I look at that specific thing. I also make them highlight what they have changed in their revision. So when they revise, they have to highlight, or so then I can also see. So it's very quick that I can look at the revision. So the revisions actually go by quite fast.
Naomi also asked, what was the standard for passing then for mastery? It is by a percentage of standard mastered for each assignment.
No, there's no percentages. So for like rhetorical situation, I'll use the rhetorical situation. For rhetorical situation, because that is a standard I want them to know, I make them almost do it until it's just about perfect. Especially the part with the purpose and the audience and things like that, that I make sure that that part is perfect. Now when they go to write their say their paragraph and they didn't capitalize everything that they were supposed to capitalize, right? Because a lot of times students don't put the capital letter at the beginning. I will not mark them off for that the first time, but I will just say, remember in the future to make sure you start each sentence with a capital letter. So the next time they have to write a paragraph or they have to write something, I'll be looking for that. Especially when the weeks are going on, and I'll be like, oh, so in the weeks, maybe, 5 and 6, if they're still not capitalizing, then I start to mark them off and say, okay, this is not mastered. Where in the beginning of the semester, I might've said, this is mastered. Again, you have to feel the student, you have to know your students.
Then, well, if anybody has any other questions, feel free to put them in there, but I'm not seeing any new questions come through. So I guess we will close that out.
Oh. Wait, did something just pop in?
It's something.
Oh, yes, I think we are going to share the link out so that you
Yep.
can rewatch it.
The recording will be available within at least 48 hours, and you will get an email from Zoom when it is available. So thank you again, Krista. Thank you for everybody
You're welcome.
attending. We would, as I said, you'll get an email of the recording once it's available. If you or any of your fellow instructors are interested in presenting for our Learning and Growing series, you can submit your proposal to the Learning and Growing website, which I'm going to link in the chat right now. And these free webinars are brought to you by Hawks Learning, an innovative educational coursework company. To learn more about our mastery-based course materials and how Hawks can enhance learning outcomes for you and your students, you can visit www.hawkslearning.com. And I hope everybody has an awesome rest of their day, and thank you for attending today. Thank you, Krista.
Thank you.